welcome to the show. It's 4 o'clock. Glad you're here. I'm Jordan. This is Michelle Lee. We've got Casey Aitchison and Angela Poe Russell. The Mr. Cashman is not live with us here, but he is live with us out at the Pacific Science Center. We're going to be catching up with him in just a moment. In the meantime, we're going to get things going with Michelle. We are talking about changing our perspective through other people.
Yeah, so I'm going to explain this because the question we're asking, has there ever been a time when an experience changed your perspective? The reason we're asking is because Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal shared a deeply personal story of her child being gender nonconforming. And this is the first time that she's shared this openly. She was emotional in a hearing in D.C. yesterday when questioning people about the Equality Act. And that act would make it unacceptable to discriminate based on sexual orientation or gender identity.
It occurred to me that we're talking about fear versus love. We're talking about fear versus freedom. And I didn't intend to say this today, but excuse me. My beautiful, now 22-year-old child told me last year that they were gender nonconforming. And over the last year, I have come to understand from a deeply personal mother's perspective. I've always been a civil rights activist. I've always fought for my constituents and my communities to have equal rights. But from a mother's perspective, I came to understand what their newfound freedom, it is the only way I can describe what has happened to my beautiful child, what their newfound freedom to wear a dress, to rid themselves of some conformist stereotype of who they are, to be able to express who they are at their real core.
Now that was just a minute of what she said. There's an entire speech that she said, and you can text the keyword equality to hear it. Again, we're asking when an experience changed your perspective. And I do want to add, Jayapal went on to say that when her child told her this last year, she said it was deeply impactful, and she said her child always did well in school, but she always said that her child had a heavy burden of conflict and couldn't really explain what it was, couldn't identify it. But she says now she wakes up with the thought that her child is free to be who they are, and all that it allows in terms of creativity, brilliance, and self-expression. So she feels good about waking up knowing that. But it's really interesting how this Equality Act is playing out in Congress, but the idea of it is really just to add those provisions in the Civil Rights Bill.
Okay.
That we currently have.
And what's the word that people can text again for information for the rest of her
Equality
speech? Equality. Okay. Text us.
Yeah, and what I love about this conversation is personalization, the way that she talked about.
Yes.
Anytime, and I've always thought that this is something, I'm not the first person to think this, but like, that's the biggest barrier between understanding each other, is that if you don't have a personal experience with it, that's where the fear comes from. So the more people who open up and get to know everybody around them and their friends and their family members,
right.